The idea that oil is not an integral part of society, like we can't just get rid of petroleum. We can move towards green energy and make it more cost effective and more sustainable. Oil itself isn't the problem, it's what we do with it. True. I would love for us to get rid of plastics and get rid of a lot of that stuff, but I want you guys to think about something. I'm all for making changes, positive changes in the world, but a lot of times the same people that people are complaining about, they're really just looking in a mirror, right? Because we have this idea that we know what's quote unquote best. Oftentimes the same people who will say, you don't know enough about this, you shouldn't talk about it, will do the same with a different subject. But other times we also are talking from a point of privilege. And this is gonna be a reality check for some people. The bottom 30% of people in America are in the top 1% in the world. Why am I bringing this up? I say to you, don't compare yourself to people that have more. Don't compare yourself to people that have less. This isn't about comparing yourself. This is about understanding. We like the idea of saying, let's stop doing X, Y, Z because it's bad. There is nothing wrong with that argument. It's very hard to find fallacy in an argument when we know that there's negative effects of something. But I want you to think about what happens if you immediately snap your fingers and plastics are gone, okay? I too would love to see an ocean that isn't full of trash, a beach that isn't full of trash, animals dying because they're swallowing trash and plastic. I would love that. But this idea that we need to get these corporations and companies to just stop it. Sometimes it's about profit. We know that. We know it's more expensive for these companies to have to shift plastic into biodegradable material. And we don't give a fuck about corporate profits, right? Unless you're invested in a company. But like overall, corporates, they make billions of dollars. They have way too much influence in government. We all know that. But stop thinking about that. And I want you to think about, because everybody wants to help people in need and help humanity. If you wiped out plastics, I want you to think about what happens to 70% of the world and their population. Seriously, this is what I love. People will only say things in chat but won't actually come out and explain themselves. Seriously, this is the biggest straw man for the sake of corporate inertia and interests. I literally just said we're all in agreement that corporations make too much money and we don't care about their profits. Speaking of straws that are made out of plastic. Once again, I'm talking about why these things are so difficult and how they impact people in other ways. You are the people I'm talking about right now. So I appreciate that you're in this chat. I'm not even mad that you're in this chat. It's a perfect example of I sit in a high castle. It may not be as big as other castles, but I sit in a high castle and therefore I know what's best for everybody and I know what will work. Why are you defending them, making more we don't need? You haven't even heard what I'm saying yet. What I'm getting at is that a lot of places, right, rely on certain things to make their society go. We look at them as a thing that we could live without, easily replace, even if it costs us a little bit more money. But there are other places in the world that couldn't do that. They don't have the resources. They don't have the GDP. They don't have the governing body. They don't have the type of economic system that would allow it. Which ironically are also the countries that are the biggest, some of the biggest contributors to some of the problems, right? So for example, if you go to, I'll give you an example, right? I'll give you an example. Let's talk about prescriptions. Here you go. We'll keep it in the United States because people don't like when I start talking about other countries because then they start saying, you're a straw man. Okay. Prescriptions in the US. Everybody knows about Rite Aid going bankrupt. We export to them in order to make profit. Yes, we make a profit by exporting to them. But what if you cut off all that export? They have nothing. What if you only export something that's more expensive? They can't afford it. That's what I was getting at. Rite Aid has filed for bankruptcy. When they file for bankruptcy, they close stores. Where do you think pharmacies, a company that has pharmacies, is going to close stores first? Anybody have a guess? Inner cities, okay? Inner cities and low-income areas. People don't want to hear this. I don't mean to be the guy, but I still got to tell you how it works. You're thinking that because I tell you the way something works, it means I agree or disagree with it. That's a personal issue. You're automatically on the defensive about everything. I'm here to just tell you how things work. Why would pharmacies close their first stores in low-income areas and inner cities? Does anybody know? Stop making them think. Okay. Theft? See? This is why I give you the information. Racism? Nope. Let's go back to something that we've talked about. What is the U.S. government administration doing right now with pharmacies, pharmaceutical companies, and Medicaid, Medicare? They're negotiating down the prices. So if Medicaid and Medicare is generally a social program, and like I said, there's bigger problems here, but we're talking about individual situations. The profit margin for sales to people on government assistance is much smaller than it is to people not. So a company who is going bankrupt and has to close stores and cut debt is going to shut down stores and pharmacies that make less money. Where do those companies make less money? In places where larger portions of the population are on government assistance. Is that the right thing to do? No. Should we have better social programs? Yes. But that's not what I'm talking about here. That's issues we already are aware of. I'm telling you why something happens. You're thinking, well, Stocky thinks that this is a good thing. No, I'm just telling you how it happens and why it happens. So Rite Aid is shutting down their pharmacies in these inner city areas and these low-income areas because they're making less money on those stores, so they're the first to go. What does that mean? There is a void that is left. And two things fill that void. Number one, it's either going to be small mom and pop pharmacies that charge more money, or B, there's going to be a desert. Now, you've heard of the word food desert. A food desert is a term that is true, but I think there's misunderstandings behind it. So, food desert. This goes back to the Target, Walmart, and thing. Remember how I talked about looting, shoplifting, and whatnot, and how people think, oh, those companies have insurance, or oh, these people are doing this to support whatever like that, and people don't realize the truth is they're actually hurting the larger community because those businesses will then either raise the prices to pass it on to the consumer, which hurts all the other people in the low-income area, or they'll pull out, and then if you have this large wholesale that sells cheap and pulls out, it's only small businesses left over that have to raise higher prices because they don't have the ability to have a margin by selling more at less, and they have to sell less at more. It's a long process, right? And this isn't an opinion. We've seen this happen many times. Same kind of concept here. You call it the food desert, right? Now, some people will use this, let's just be honest, the wrong way. Some people will use this and give misinformation as to why we have food deserts. The number one main thing that people say is, well, these people just, intimidate, rob, this, and these people leave, and then now they don't have any food, and then they complain why nobody's selling to them but they keep getting robbed and shit like that. There's some truth to that. There's also a lot of straw man to that, if you want to bring up the word straw man. It's not just, I think people like to use it as a blame game oftentimes and say it's inner city or low income areas. They're everybody there is a criminal, and therefore they're robbing these stores, and these stores all leave, and now they don't have any food, and they say, well, why did this happen to us? And these people are hurting themselves, whatever. There's also understandable things. It's not just about that. I think that's a straw man argument in some cases. I think it's also because people don't understand how profit margins work, right? We live in a society where whether you love capitalism, hate capitalism, whatever, it's driven by, is something sustainable? Is it profitable? Otherwise, the government has to run it. And if you go to an area where you're not making as much profit and that's sustained over time and that value goes down, you close up shop and either go bankrupt or you leave. And that can happen with a lot of cases like this. And how does this draw back to oil? Well, now that I've broken it down to a specific regional area within the United States, I want you to think about that in the global side. I want you to think of U.S., and I know this sounds very fucking, United States exceptionalism, but that's not the point. It's just a reality, right? So you look at the United States, and this is your gated community, right? This is your gated community, your top 1%ers, right? Your top 0.1%ers. And then you've got the EU and this island over here, right? Sorry, forgive me for my drawings, guys. You know I'm not good at this. Okay? This is your, this is your 0.1%ers. This is your 1%ers. Okay, well, this part of it is, I guess. Not these people, but this is your 1%ers. And then you've got, your China would be your, your middle class, right? But I want you to think about this. Just like in America, you have your considered low income or your less fortunate, lower middle class, poor, poverty level, low income, whatever. That makes up like 75% of the world's population. Stop trying to inject nuance into this. We're banning oil tomorrow, bro. It's not just about oil. I'm talking about just the idea of we have to ban something. No, we need to phase things out. But before we phase something out, we have to find an alternative because otherwise you leave people behind. And that's what people don't want to talk about. I'm going to see myself out, chat. Why are you breathing on this planet we share together? I want to really consider this question. Ask if the way you are living your life and what you believe in is the best for the children of children you will never have the privilege of knowing. It's time for humanity to start giving a shit about the things surrounding us rather than the things we get better. You know what's funny? I would bet $1,000 that person doesn't know who the director of their school board is, who their judge is, and they've never voted in a local election. I'm going to go out on a limb on that one. It's the people that are the loudest that do the least amount. All right, moving on. But this is actually a good opportunity for people to understand. So, back to what I was saying. This actually is something a lot of people misunderstand when it comes to doing good in the world. We want to do good. We know that there's good, but you got to have something replacement for, because it's easy for us in these areas to say, let's just ban something or let's just get rid of something without understanding how that could affect everyone else, because we somehow think that our microcosm, Americans, we're the worst at this. All right? I'm not saying you or I, but Americans as a whole, this exceptionalism thing is insane. And I'm not here to shit on anybody for being proud or whatever, but this idea that like you don't realize it. I don't think you do until I want you to go to another country and sit there quietly and watch the Americans that are visiting there, like the regular tourists, and see how embarrassing it is sometimes. And it's not because they're all assholes, it's ignorance. A lot of them just don't realize that they're putting off this stuff. Like, we have it, so therefore it's what everybody should have. Or we have the opportunity to do something everyone else should, right? Like, oh, well, just start driving an electric car. You know, in Cuba, the embargo's been going on so long that the cars they have are from the 1950s. They don't even have cars that are from this century. You can't just look at those people and be like, oh, well, they should drive an EV. It's like there's a lot of other nuances in the world. And so as much as we want to be the leader, because whether it's because you're feeling guilty because, you know, you're the country, or you're the populations that caused the problem, so it's your job to fix them, great, take the lead on it. But don't think that it's just as easy for everybody else to do this, because a lot of people in a lot of populations do not have the opportunities. We look at our lower income in America and think, oh my God, this is bad, this is whatever. The lower income in America are the upper income in a lot of the world. And so when we want this idea of just ban, fossil fuels for power, great. You could maybe do that in the United States. We could find alternatives. You do that the rest of the world, those people die. We have to fix our own grid before we can even attempt to go anywhere. And that's even without the idea that there's profit margins. So while, yes, I would love to change the world immediately, it is a long process. And when you accept that that is a long process and that it isn't as easy as and isn't as fixable as you want, then you can start making the change, because you understand that the change starts with you and at home. And that's a tough thing. Now, I'm not here to sit here and be like, I'm not Greta Thunberg. I'm going to be like, how dare you? And tell you, that you guys got to, be the change you want to see in the world kind of thing. But I just wanted to make the point where somebody goes, the idea that, this. I just want you to realize it's bigger than what you think it is. And that when it comes to plastics and oils and these things, yes, we want to get rid of it. And yes, we want to help our planet and we want to do all this stuff. But it's not as easy as just ban or replace immediately. It is a long process. And we got to stop thinking about just where we're at and how these things affect, because a lot of people really don't understand the convenience of what we have here versus anywhere else. A lot of people have never traveled. If you've ever been to South America, okay, whole different ball game. Okay, I'm not even talking about African nations. I'm not even talking about Middle East. I'm not talking about, the Southeast Asia. I'm talking about just South America. It is night and day. And maybe it's because I've been there many times, and I also live in South Florida. There's a lot of immigrants from South America. But bro, night and day. The car keys? They're on the kitchen counter out there. You remember how to drive?